Welcome to week 4. This week we're going to be talking about Java string methods, object data fields, object method calls, the game object, start and update functions. So right now that makes no sense, but we're going to go through all of that. I first want to just go over a bit of variable naming conventions. I noticed in your programming assignments, obviously you were just experimenting and just learning about it, but I want to make some conventions. So for constants, they should be defined usually as class variables at the very top of your code before any method definitions, because if you're going to use them as a constant, that means the value isn't changing and you're going to use it all over your code. So that's why you're defining it as a constant in the first place. You use the keyword final, and I would like you, the convention is to make the name of the variable in all capital letters. So for example, final int max equals 10. See, max is all capital letters. It uses final. Final double temp and final string name equals Susie. Those are all capital letters because they're constants. And they're all defined in one place up at the top of your code. Other variables should all start with lowercase letters, and I'd like you to declare them all at the top of the block that they're being defined in, so the top of the block or the method. Declare them all together. You can initialize them if you like, but you don't have to. And then I'd like you not to declare any more variables once you are down into your code. So for example, we're going to declare all of our variables here, and then once your code is here, we will not declare any new variables. If you're designing your code and you need a new variable, you add it to the top. So the top of the block. So that is how I would like you to declare your variables. Okay, we're going to talk a bit about Java string methods. So we talked about the string data type last time. That is string with a capital S, and you can declare variables. So here I've declared 3 variables: string 1, string 2, string 3. We can use the plus sign as concatenation, which we went over last time. So I can say that string 3 equals string 1 plus string 2, and that's going to concatenate them together. So if string 1 is hello and string 2 is there, and you concatenate them together, string 3 will be hello there. You can also test for equivalence, and there's a function that strings have that is called equals. We use what's called dot notation. You take the name of the variable, you put a dot, and then the name of the function, and then any arguments that might go in there. So if I say s1 dot equals s2, it's going to compare s1 to s2 and either return true or false. So that is a Boolean function. You can also do lexicographical ordering, which is like alphabetical ordering, to see which string would come first in a list, say. That function is called compare to. What compare to does is it either returns a negative value, a positive value, or a 0. So if I say s1 dot compared to s2, it's going to compare the string s2 to string s1. If s1 is first lexicographically in alphabetical order, then the value that you return will be negative. If it's greater, the value will be positive, and if they're equal, the value will be 0. So you usually use the equivalence dot equals and dot compare to. In some way, you have to use the return value. So normally you would use that in an if-else statement because you're saying, are they equal? Is one lower than the other? We will talk about if-else statements in a couple weeks, but that's how you would use those. However, here are some other functions that we could use now. Suppose I say that S1 equals hello. I can then use 2 lowercase or 2 uppercase to turn the value of that string into either all uppercase or all lowercase characters. It doesn't change the string that you're calling it from. It just returns an uppercase or lowercase version. So if I say that S2 equals S1.2 lowercase, then what's going to happen is the value of S1 will get returned all as lowercase characters and be assigned to S2. And S1.2 uppercase, it's going to turn all the characters into uppercase, return that, and assign it to S3. So it returns the value of S1 either in all lowercase or uppercase letters and assigns them to the variables. S1 does not change. So if S1 is hello, S2 becomes hello all lowercase, S3 becomes hello all uppercase, and S1 does not change at all. Okay, we're going to look at code 12, and I don't know if you've noticed, but there are 2 functions that are defined in code 12, 2 methods that we've seen in the code when we start it up. We start a new program, you see ct.start and ct.update. Now most of you should have just been doing any code in the ct.start because that's basically just runs the program once. It's called and executed once. It's the first thing that's executed when you start your program running. ct.update is used for animations. So in the code 12 code, we're able to do animations. We're able to draw circles and move them across the screen. So what happens is that gets called 60 times per second. We call that the frame rate. And every time it gets called, it runs the code. So if you're changing the x coordinate each time, then you will see your circle move across the screen. And I'll show you examples of that in a bit. An object that is defined in code 12 is called the game object. Now let me take a minute to explain what an object is. So Java is an object-oriented programming language. That means we have objects that we define, and those objects can then communicate with each other. In each object, you have data that's associated with the object, and you have methods that are used to manipulate the data that's associated with the object. Okay, so if I have a student object, maybe some of the data I might have for that student would be their name, their age, their GPA, their major. So this is data I need to keep track of in order to keep track of where the student is or who the student is. And if I want to change any of those values, then I need to have a method defined that will change the value. So I might have a calculate GPA method. I might have a get age method. I might have a birthday method that increments the age by 1. I might have a change major method. I will have lots of other methods, all that manipulate all the data for the student. So together, that is the student object. You can then define a variable of that type, of type student. So suppose here I have an object defined somewhere that's a student. So basically it's a class. I have a student class. I can then say student me equals new student. Now we're going to do this later. You don't have to worry about this right now. And then what we do is we use something called dot notation in order to access either the data or the methods for that class. So if I say me.name equals Susie, me.gpa equals CS, me.calc GPA, I can calculate the GPA, me.change major to business, I can do that, okay? So this is the same as when we were doing with the string class, we had S1 dot compare to, or S1 dot to uppercase. It's using the dot notation. The string class has those methods. So the same way that I can define a class, then I can use its values and its data and its methods with the dot notation. So that's all going to become a lot clearer later on. I don't want you to necessarily have to understand completely what I just explained. Just understand that that's the concept. But more specifically, we're going to talk about this game object. So in code 12, there is a class that's already defined called game object. So we can declare variables of that type. So I can declare a variable called ball that's a game object, and I can set it to be a circle or text or a line or a rectangle, any of the objects that we saw that we could make in code 12. So say I set my ball to CT circle 10, 20, 30. That means the x coordinate is 10, the y coordinate is 20, and the size is 30. So that's going to draw a ball, draw a circle on the screen, but it's going to attach that circle to this variable called ball. Now if I want, I can manipulate the circle on the screen by accessing the variables for the ball variable that I have here. So I can say ball.x equals 50. What ball.x does is it changes the x coordinate. So here we have game object instance variables, that's the data. We have x, which is the current x coordinate, y, the current y coordinate. There's one called visible, which shows you can either choose for it to show up on the screen or not. And there's another one called group, so you can group together objects and then do something. If you do something to one, you can do that to all of them. We don't have to worry about that right now. Mostly we want to look at the x and the y, but I can change the x coordinate. I can then change the y coordinate by saying ball.y equals 75, and I can maybe make the visible true, ball.visible equals true. What will happen if I put this in the update function, in the update method, then when this value gets changed, my circle will be drawn with the new coordinates at the place where the new coordinates are. So the x coordinate 50, 75, you will see the circle move. I will show you examples in a little bit. Those were the instance variables. There are also some methods that the game object class has. I will go through them in a bit on a different video. I'm going to go through some examples of code. It'll become a lot more clear once you see that. Programming assignment 4, again, is very open-ended. You don't have to be very creative. It doesn't have to make sense. I just want you to experiment with creating game objects, manipulating the data, using some of the methods, just to show me that you're experimenting and trying to figure out what all of those things do. And then don't forget lesson prep week 5. So assignment 4 and lesson prep week 5 will be due on Sunday by midnight. Okay, now we'll go on to the next video.